Another speaker joining us. Hello, Carlos. Hello, welcome. It's so good to have you. A little bit of a delay, but it's all the professionals of you. That's what's happening.
All right, no problem. Can you hear me all right, Katie?
Yes, everything.
Okay,
I can
fantastic.
see you well and hear you well. I'm just going to say quickly that this is Carlos Nunez, and he's actually the head of pharma strategy from Captario. Captario is one of our sponsors. So thank you so much. And shout out to Captario. Thank you so much for sponsoring, for making this conference happening and possible and wonderful. And we're going to have Carlos Nunez here with a presentation on accelerating oncology drug development, new modeling paradigms. So we're going to hear all about it. And I'm very pleased to welcome you here again. So welcome, and I'm giving you the word.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing here at Captario. The topic that we're going to present is accelerating oncology drug development, new modeling paradigms. And the idea here is that oncology, as many of you probably know, has really been challenging the way that we think about drug development and the opportunities that we have to think about in modeling drug development programs so that we reflect the true opportunities ahead of us. So I'm going to take you through some of the challenges that are faced in this overall landscape. And towards the end of the talk, I'll give you some perspectives on how Captario is looking to help you as potentially being in this industry or industries with their own challenges, that I should say therapeutic areas with their own challenges, because we can translate that across. So let me see if I can get into the right place to advance here. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about. Modeling oncology medicine opportunities in a fast-changing market landscape is really about how fast you move to market. And so in oncology, we're seeing that the move to market sometimes happens right after first-in-human trials. So if the data looks good and the product is promising in a patient landscape, then the opportunity to go directly into a trial is feasible, which means there are a lot of things to consider. Do we have the supply ready? Do we have the commercialization plans ready? And can we do it? And so the challenge really is, how do we represent all of this planning in a tool environment that allows you to see the possibilities? And it certainly doesn't look like traditional drug development if you're doing that, or at least the old style. I mean, drug development is rapidly changing. And so we will help you to understand the modeling scenarios that will really drive maximum potential in these innovative and fast-moving therapies. So why are we focusing on oncology? Well, the idea is that oncology over the years has seen significant changes in some of the key metrics that we look at from an oncology perspective, which generally is overall survival. So in 1970, when we looked at the overall oncology landscape, and this is data taken from a McKinsey report issued in 2020, this 5-year survival looked like about 50%. And that's across the oncology landscape. Move forward quite a number of years into 2009, and we see that survival over 5 years improves to about 70%. So that's a significant improvement, and we know that technology's advanced quite a bit since then. But if you look more specifically at different types of cancers, then you start to understand that not all of this 50% to 70% is reflected across the board, and you have significant improvements in some indications or cancer types, tumor types, and significant opportunity in others, such as pancreatic cancer, glioblastoma, non-small cell lung cancer. So the message that we'll go into is that the landscape looks quite different depending on what you're studying. Now, as far as the opportunity goes, we see in 19 reported branded sales of about $143 billion, with 20% of oncology making up all of pharma sales. So the segment is quite robust, and significant enough for us to pay attention. However, even more significant is that projected 2024 sales moved to $250 billion. So that's massive jump in opportunity in the market. And so what we'll do is try to explore a little bit about how you tackle that opportunity. So innovative oncology therapies present enormous health improvements and market opportunity, as we saw in the previous slide, but the current market is still dominated by a few key products, and there are some interesting notes about that. So if you look to the right of the slide that I have forward are kind of the primary players. If you're in this space, you know that very well. You have, and some of these companies have actually come together as well. But the idea is that you have, Keytruda, Revlimid, Opdivo, Avastin. They're really like taking a significant chunk of what the market opportunity is. And you see that on the left, blockbusters with sales of over $5 billion are made up with 7 products. But the number percentage of that 143 is quite significant, whereas 28 products make up sales of $1 to $5 billion. So still significant, still in the blockbuster category, not such high potential, but you have an enormous amount of products, 219 of them, that really only make up 31. So, everybody's on the lookout for a blockbuster, certainly want to see if the opportunities can be achieved in blockbusters, but there are things to understand why the biggest players continue to have dominance in that space. And so as we work to model out what the future is, understanding, how franchises are protected and assets continue to expand, and how do you break through with an asset into sort of a broader franchise, are things that we'll want to consider overall. So these will be presented by technology innovations, potentially new regulatory pathways that will accelerate new medicines, and then translating those innovations into real potential, and hopefully beyond the non-blockbuster into the blockbuster space. However, not every product's going to get there. Not every product's going to be a blockbuster, and you need to understand sort of how do you balance out the potential for the investment that you're going to make if you end up in the lower tier as opposed to the 2 upper tiers. So what makes the development modeling unique? Well, I break it out into sort of 3 components. One is just the speed of the development. It is quite significant acceleration opportunity that we want to look for. And therefore, sort of when we're looking at innovative medicines, we want to understand what they're targeting, what the market opportunity looks like, and see if the potential that there is an opportunity for a breakthrough designation should be modeled into the particular product. Now, we know, as discussed earlier, that oncology is not a single disease. So every oncology tumor type has unique treatment considerations, and a single molecule may lead to indications across multiple tumor types. So dependencies basically between the different opportunities should be factored in. So if, for example, we're targeting in a molecule for underserved disease area, which may lead to breakthrough therapies, we may want to lead with that opportunity. However, knowing that we could expand through life cycle development, life cycle management into other available and maybe not so underserved areas. So this might be a strategy to stage the way that we would progress the molecule. However, the landscape is extremely fast changing, and we see even in recent innovations that the therapy is changing standard of care at a pace that is not consistent with other therapeutic areas, and therefore trying to predict what the next innovation is going to be and how impactful it could be to standard of care or different lines of therapy is something to consider as we're contemplating the competitive environment. So sometimes the idea will be that planning the combination therapy with standard of care or evolving standard of care is something that will be effective in positioning the asset at the appropriate time when the plan is to launch to market. So what do we do in trying to enable this? Well, as I mentioned, we're looking at quite a big change in the potential for developing this product from the traditional development path. So as you know, in the traditional development path, we would see, things progress logically through the different stage gates and phases of development, and that works really well. And on an aggregate view, you should be able to represent your project effectively here. And when you look at an overall aggregate portfolio, this kind of logic all makes sense. And you could use a standard business forecasting model to accommodate this. However, we have represented this in what we call business process modeling notation, BPMN. And in our BPMN modeling, we tend to see opportunities for different development paths to emerge. Trying to keep those development paths within a same modeling construct allows you to see the opportunities either, if you go down one path or if you go into another path. So in the condition where we're thinking about acceleration modeling, we would start with the normal traditional development path, go through, well, in this case, you might go through an expansion phase of deciding what you're going to put through your phase 1, then evolving into your phase 2 trial. If that's successful, making a determination, would we have an opportunity to accelerate this and potentially do a phase 3 later, and then do a confirmatory study on the phase 3 after we've launched? Or will we go through a traditional phase 3 trial in the normal way, and then just go through the regulatory and registration pathway normally? So in this kind of modeling, having them both together allows you to play out and maybe simulate different probabilities that you'll get down one path or another, what the overall value of the opportunity is with the uncertainty that you may or may not get the acceleration, and then playing out some scenarios about if we got acceleration, what are the things that we should be aware of and accounting for in that planning. So it's a nice way to make sure that when you're speaking about the decision with your decision makers, that you can look forward at all the potential futures. As I mentioned, it's not just accelerations that matter, but lifecycle management makes a significant impact in this oncology space as well. And what we're illustrating here is that in a similar all-inclusive model, you can also incorporate the potential that you might want to branch into multiple indications. So if you have a basket study in oncology here that has the potential to look for, a signal against a particular tumor type, you can model out whether your signal is positive and whether you would want to pursue a development path in a particular tumor type indication. In this case, we model out that you could, in a single model, look at breast, pancreatic, and NSCLC, and in each case, you could have a potential positive path outcome or a negative path outcome, or on aggregate, multiple positive path outcomes. And so the idea that you could simulate the potential paths forward in all of those indications and the probabilities of their success, considering the uncertainty of whether you would evolve into those paths or not, could be contemplated overall with an understanding, the value of going in each path, or maybe even the desire to stage the different paths so that you could accommodate the cost and the impact in your planning exercise. So when you look at the outcomes, as I mentioned, you could look at different cases. The idea is that you'll want to look at them side by side. And so I show you some illustrations that come from the Captario tool, where you can look at the base case scenario where you would not have accelerated, for example, and you can see the probability that your launch date would be much later than if you accelerated. And so when we run through the acceleration scenarios and run multiple iterations and distribute the probability of launching, that in a model that allows for that sort of flexibility, you would see the likelihood that you would get to sort of a January, in this case, 2026 launch timing versus a July 27 launch timing. And in the same scenarios, you could plot out what your potential revenue difference is for the base case versus the accelerated case, and the probability of your getting NPV, of the appropriate level. So, the higher the NPV here in this case will be in your base case, you're probably going to get a lesser NPV in this accelerated case for whatever the condition is. Maybe it's a more targeted indication, for example. So simulating portfolio outcomes, then if you incorporate these different projects, and stack them up across multiple investments, allow you to look at things not just on a particular asset level, but all of these sort of complex models can be aggregated within the tool into a portfolio construct, and then you can model out the portfolio with the multiple simulations in a distribution model. And so you could look at cash flows effectively, where your graphs cross your flat horizon line is where your break-even points on your investment are, and you can look at that either at an asset level or an aggregate portfolio level. And it's a nice tool to understand, where you want to, when you're going to achieve break-even. From an overall portfolio perspective, you could then look at your entire oncology portfolio by the assets, in this case, color-coded based on the asset contribution to your overall expected revenues, and or launch timing, when your particular assets are intended to launch over time, and how that volume or project composition looks into the future. And then as you play out different scenarios, you could rerun these simulations so that you look at what the overall outcome is against the different portfolio options. And that's effectively what I show here. So if you've run different scenarios at an aggregate portfolio level, you can begin to compare the complex drug development paths for a particular asset or franchise in the oncology space, or lifecycle management efforts, and then look at them in context of an overall portfolio scenario. So if you change the portfolio configuration, then rerun the simulations, we could then start to look at the differences across different scenarios at an ENP or a net present value level. You could look at the range of value in the scenario, or you could look at the overall composition and contribution on an aggregate level as a cumulative volume-based view. And then you can see each line plotted for the different contributions of different projects or assets in the whole. And so, by contrasting one against the other, you might be informed by how you want to progress your investment decisions at an individual asset level, and make sure that those decisions are taken in the context of the broader portfolio. So we provide a seamless solution that does a little bit of both at the project level, a lot of both, I might say, at the project level and at the portfolio level. So, when we have these complex drug development path scenarios that we want to contemplate and play out, the various specific scenarios for the project or the asset, we could model that in our environment within the portfolio construct. And then once we agree to the path forward, monitor that within the portfolio. If we're really playing out the idea of uncertainty and figuring out what the strategic plan options are, and you want to play out a few scenarios before you make a commitment to your portfolio, then you can run that, play the scenario out from a portfolio perspective. What if conditions like, what if our competitor makes it to market before we do? What does that mean in our trial design? And should we accommodate for that what if possibility in the way that we build out our comparator, for example? So these might be things that you would want to think about if you had the environment to play out the scenarios of the impact of the competitor entry before yours. Okay. So the SUM environment is fully integrated. As you saw, we have the BPMN capability that allows you to do your infrastructure modeling. We have an end-to-end modeling environment that allows you to capture the information, be it timing, cost, revenue, risk, all within the construct of the model. Then have the contributors of the information, that be it portfolio group who are doing maybe your project management group, or your clinical folks who have the R&D and cost information, your finance folks who might have the budget limits, or even your overall cost forecasts, and etc. So all those contributors can effectively bring their information into the SUM environment and allow you to build out those models with the most trusted reference data that will ensure credibility and success of your models moving forward. So with that in place, then you can simulate the outcomes, you can build P&Ls and overall sort of visualizations, some of what I showed you earlier, and then get output data that helps inform the decision process. So all of that is built into sort of a continuous cycle where, as you learn more and make decisions on your projects, you continue to feed that data back in to see your product and asset investment decisions in a longitudinal fashion. So through the life cycle of those investments. So I think I got a question here on BPMN. So the BPMN can work, yeah, okay, great. I see it come up on my screen. So as well, for multiple indications and lines of therapy, yes. So the idea is, as I showed before in the BPMN, you can have complex models with multiple lines of therapy running at the same time. If you want to consider how to progress, should you go in first line, second line, third line, and what are the possible outcomes or potential opportunities in each. And so that, be it line of therapy or indications, can be actually all modeled in a single BPMN, as I mentioned earlier. And because of that, as Richard mentions in his question, the correlated risks and dependencies are all interconnected. Now, these could be done in different ways. You could do it as multiple separate projects and build dependencies across them, but it tends to be easier to view it all in a single BPMN. So if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Our platform is built in a model that allows you to do all your project studio work and your portfolio studio work in the same environment. And then you can build, and this may get to the question that was asked, there's an assumption manager that allows you beyond your project model, but across your portfolio model, to build assumptions that could reach into other projects, if you will, or it could be set assumptions at an overall portfolio level, so that when you simulate, you can create dependency structures between your projects or project outcomes. We have additional things like data APIs, which allow the connection to external data or the integration with external data, either for pushing data out or pulling data in. And if we're pushing data out, we can collaborate with external tools or do custom programming through Python or R, for example, and deliver to Power BI or Tableau, or the one everyone loves, which is Excel, as we see that as being still a powerful tool. And no matter what kind of solution you're going to work with, this tends to be your helper along the way. But analytic outputs basically can be self-service, ad hoc, but we have dynamic dashboards that help you deliver interactive capabilities to interrogate the data and get some really quick results that are really easy to consume for an advanced analyst or an executive who wants to see very simplified and focused results of their portfolio. So we think this is a fantastic tool. Just a plug here for Captario. We think the reason to engage with us is because we have exceptional expertise with lots of people. I won't say how many years of experience beyond 200. I think it's exceeded that for sure by now, but lots of experience from people who come from the industry, who are developing solutions for the industry. So The solution is all integrated. We see it being really helpful to have all these pieces together, as I mentioned, and we have it ready to deploy to you. And so you don't have to wait a long time. If you're ready to engage in a solution like this, we're ready to help you solve it. Now, I see a bunch of questions coming in, so let me ask, related to Dr. Bainey's question, what is the recommended cycle time for data refresh? What risk do you take that external data inputs become stale? It really depends across the client community. So we feel like there are appropriate staging depending on how you're working with the data. So the more you engage with the system, the faster the data refresh cycles are going to need to be. I think this question comes from the Planisware environment. So in the Planisware environment, that is going to often be a source of information for cost and for timing. And so if we're looking at the cost and timing dependencies there, you probably want to make sure that those are available to your projects when you're reprocessing for a decision. That may be, when the decision is made, perhaps on a quarterly basis or something. So there's a way to draw that data in when you need it. But typically, if you're going to do a portfolio solution, you're going to be doing monthly based reviews of the portfolio to understand and to ensure that the portfolio is relevant at the time that people are looking at it. So it tends to be that monthly is okay, but I've seen clients moving, to daily, and so it's possible as well. Next question, Dave. Okay, so that maybe not to me. Depending on external factors, that's changes, etc. In addition to set the refresh rates. Okay. That's an answer separately. I don't have, okay, so a question about, can I share specific oncology results? Unfortunately, I don't have any to share. So I think that's it. We have a tool that we think is an effective tool. If you have any questions beyond that I can answer, I think I'm at my time, but I'd be happy to stay on for a few minutes to answer any questions if you have.
Yeah, we are at the end, top of the hour, but feel free. I cannot see any more questions, but as you said, anyone can contact you or Captario. Please, you, Carlos, become a member of PPM Workup platform, and then everyone can actually join you as well. I'm going to be a shameless plug in there for the PPM Workup platform. But feel free. I mean, that's the easiest way for everyone to really reach you if you'd like to be there as you and yourself and our attendees. But I would love to thank you. This was really, really fruitful and very insightful. Carlos Nunez again. This was Carlos from Captario. Captario is one of our wonderful sponsors, and for thank you so much to you and Captario for making it all happen and possible for us to be here. So thank you again, and everyone. If you'd like to connect with Carlos, do so, or write me an email and I'll connect you all. So please do so. And thank you so much, Carlos.
All right, my pleasure.